Hello and welcome back to the Upset Podcast. This evening we're talking about PKs, showcased and under pressure. Coming up next. All right. Yes. Welcome back to the Upset Podcast. We're so happy that you tuned in on this Memorial Day weekend. And when I say I'm talking about these firecrackers themselves. Hey, guys.
Did she just call it crackers?
I think she called us that. I think she did.
Racism is an ugly thing.
Oh, mercy. How's everybody doing?
All right.
I'm looking for a cookout. though. Who? Tally? Are you cooking out? I'm looking.
I'm not even cooking in.
Well, the question is, are you invited to the cookout or are you crashing?
No, I would just come in. I'm just coming.
That's crashing. That's crashing.
What Marlena does, she calls it a pastoral visit. You know, she comes and prays with people.
Coming with an anointing. He needs it. Coming with an anointing.
Yeah, that's a great day to make your rounds. And of course, earlier today, Pine Forge Academy had their graduation. So once again, we celebrate all of our graduates. I think there were 31 in the class this year. So congratulations.
Wow.
To them. And all the other graduations that will be happening later in the week. So shout out to all our schools and graduates.
It was a great graduation message that he gave this morning. Can you remember any of it, Tosh?
Well,
it was very poignant, but I just want to marinate on a little bit more before I talk about it.
Futuristic, almost
prophetic. Tally. Calvin Walker was growling, boy.
Oh yes, my colleague there. Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, there is no graduation like a Pine Forge graduation.
That is true.
That's true.
Yeah,
true.
It's a whole
like a mini camp meeting.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of festivities.
Absolutely.
Of course, Andrews was like that too. A lot of festivities.
Yeah, like ours
yes,
too.
happy Memorial Day and happy graduation. Let's just go happy. Yeah. All right, guys. So, since it's the weekend, since it's a holiday weekend, we decided we're just going to jump right into our topic. Hey, why not? We know you guys want to get back to being with family and, looking forward to a day off, hopefully for most of you tomorrow. And so we're going to go ahead and introduce our guest. Now, as you guys know, in previous podcasts, I think last month, we covered what the pastor experiences, the pressures that a pastor goes through. Then we dealt with pastoral spouses and their perspectives and some of the things that we don't always realize that they're experiencing. And so we promised that we would come back with the part 3 to talk about the experience of a pastor's kid, affectionately known as the PK. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the PK.
Isn't that Caribbean for pickaninny?
I'm not Caribbean.
We don't say pickaninny, we say pick-me. It's pick-me.
Yeah.
But before we bring our guest on, who are PKs, I wanted to ask you guys, when you were growing up and you heard, so-and-so's a PK, because none of us are PKs, right? None of us are PKs, even though, right. So what came to your mind? What were some of the first initial thoughts? PK, what?
I actually didn't know any pastor's children growing up. I didn't grow up in the church or anything. And so
that makes sense.
It wasn't until I went to Oakwood that I really became aware of the fact that this was a phenomenon.
That makes sense.
Tally, I'm with you on that. I didn't know anything about PK till I got to Oakwood. I didn't know what it meant. But I could tell you
didn't your pastors have children?
That's what I was going to say. So your pastors did?
Pastor had children. I mean, all of them. I get
When I
all
was
the time, but
growing
I
up.
don't think we
Labeled them.
calling them, PKs at the time. I mean, they probably were, but that's not the terminology that we use.
Right, I see.
But if I have to be perfectly honest with you, my brother and I were so popular and troublesome that that everyone was like, so where's your father, pastor? And and our last name was Graham, and there were Grahams in Chicago and Grahams in California, so they thought that we were sons to the Grahams, but
Sons of Thunder. That's what
that is what we still.
So as if Tasha calls you a firecracker and your name is Graham, are you a Graham cracker?
You know what? You can't plan this stuff, can you?
Yeah. We are. But I think the thing is, when we started to hear about PKs, there was always a negative connotation to it.
Yeah.
It was never something that was. Matter of fact, I could even remember someone saying, "Hey, I'm a PK," and be like, "Well, but you don't act like them." What is until you realize that later on now that everyone looks at it as either popular, and so it's negative and positive. Popular, if they're males, they're going to be preachers. They know everybody, so it's not just negative, like, okay, bad behavior, because I know a lot of PKs that most of the PKs that I know are not off the wall. It's just one person that can take all of them down the street.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt like it was two extremes. Either, there was this expectation that, oh, they're going to be rebellious because they don't want to be put into this.
Right.
And then the other extreme, or, oh, they must, know all the scriptures their father knows or mother knows, and they must be very well behaved because that's what we expect from pastors' children, right? So I think it was a mixture of both. When I heard the, phrase PK. But we do have some PKs that are joining us because
that still sounds
find out
bad.
about the experience of those who've gone through it. And one of the things I realized, guys, by talking to different PKs and just doing a little research, is that there is no one way, there's no, perspective that is consistent throughout. Each PK, just like in life, has a different experience. And so that's why it's very unfair to necessarily put them in a specific box because, there's so many factors that determine the PK experience. But without further ado, let's introduce our guest for this evening here. We have first Erik Kelly. Some of you may recognize the last name. He is the son of the infamous T. Marshall Kelly.
Welcome.
Yeah,
and we also have.
I didn't hear his voice. I didn't hear it. I think it was.
Let's get a greeting from him.
Yeah, let's get a greeting.
I am pleased to be here with you today.
Because it takes everything to serve the Lord.
John the Revelator heard that it was like the voice of many thunders.
We also have another set of guests. We have the Privette.
Wow.
Son, Jaiell. It's pronounced Jaiell, right?
Yeah. Jaiell.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I just ask you a favor? Can you just move me out of their way because it's put me in where I'm kind of like a pastor's kid or something like that. I just want to be out of their way altogether. Thank you. I think I feel a whole lot better now. Plus, when we first started to work together, I came in after, so he was known as a year ahead of me at DuPont Park. I don't want him on top of me in this.
I mean, but with the Privettes, we've got two generations of pastors.
That's right. That's right.
So we have Pastor DuWayne Privette, whose father, that is Privette, is a pastor. Is that as far back as it goes?
Real gentleman.
That's as far back as it goes. And of course, the Lord blessed him to be the stewardship director for a while here at Allegheny East Conference.
Right.
The stew pot man.
Yeah.
That's right. That's the stew pot.
Great. So welcome. Thank you both.
Yes.
For you for being here. We're looking forward to diving into this conversation, and we'll get to know a little bit more about you as we talk and ask us. So you heard us talking about PKs and what we experienced or heard about them. Would you, based on what we said, would you resonate with some of those assumptions that people made about PKs? Did you hear that or experience that that's what people thought of you?
Man, and it was silence in heaven for the space.
When you said there's not one descriptor, you're 100% correct.
Yeah, yeah.
We are as individual as anybody else is. So yeah, I 100% agree. There are some PKs that never had an ounce of trouble. They were perfect, whatever. And yet they still might have gotten hit with the PK moniker, the negative connotations, because, you know, you are. But yeah, I don't think there's one size does not fit all.
Right.
I have a question for all three of you. When was the first time that you realized that because of who your father was, people had expectations about you? How old were you the first time you realized, hey, wait a minute, there's a different set of expectations because of who my daddy is?
From what I remember, I think I was 7, and
Wow.
I was running around in the church with my friends, and some old person, they came out and they were like,
Too late, Jaiell. You already said it.
Old people.
they came up and they were like, "You're a pastor's kid, and you shouldn't be running in the church, and you should know better." And that really just put me off and made me realize, whoa, I'm different from everybody around me. So,
You were 7 years old?
yeah.
7.
Wow, so that was 2 years ago.
Yeah, just about then.
Yeah, okay.
Jaiell said that's negative. That's a name. I'm a man now.
Yeah. But I'm gonna tell you, I don't remember a time in which it just clicked on me that, you know, my dad is a pastor and there's some extra expectations. I think in our family, I just, you know, you kind of feel certain things when you are transitioning from one church to the next. And then that's when you see people, you know, you're the pastor's kids, you're the new kids on the block. But I think that, you know, this is my experience. You know, I have a brother, Timothy, and a sister named Rachel, and they may have their own experiences. But for me, you know, we were just able to be ourselves. And I didn't feel like there was a lot of extra pressure. You know, of course, there are different things that you experience as a PK. Just because, you know, I think my son and I were talking earlier that, yeah, the expectations, you know, other people can watch certain movies and your home is restricted. You know, other people go to the parties and then you can't go because that's just not how, you know, your dad is running the ship. And so, but for the most part, I did not always feel that particular pressure. I will say this, I hate it. And I would put that big capital H, capital A, capital T, capital D, capital D. I hope I spelled that correctly. But I hated the fact that they did say PKs were the worst kids.
Wow.
And so for me, it was always, I think it was always an issue that I wanted to prove people wrong, that we weren't the worst kids. And then when I came to Pine Forge, and I met other good PKs, I was like, see, you know, people need to broaden their horizons because we're all not bad.
To Jaiell's point, as an old guy in a church, I was watching kids run around and the pastor's son was running with them. And someone who was angry at the pastor picked out his son to say, and you should know better. Now there's 8 or 9 kids running. So now I am an old pastor's kid, and I teed off on that brother like we was in WWE. There was no way in the world. I said, look, just because you are mad at his father, you know, and sometimes my language, you know, anyway, I'm not a.
The gift of tongues came up.
Okay, that's real. That part is real. But that brother, I said, if I ever see you saying anything to that boy ever again, there were 8 kids running. But pastors, and I don't know if all of them are aware that their families are under heightened attack when people are mad at them.
Right.
So they come with their kids. So the kids are doing what all the kids are doing. But because you are in that role, your kids are set up to take shots that other kids don't have to take.
I'm not a psychologist, but that sounds like the voice of trauma. In other words, that it connected to something that you might remember.
Yeah, we're going to give him 6 phases of. That's our gift to him. That's our gift to him. But you know, even though we're smiling about it, there is trauma. We just think trauma is something that you can see trauma when somebody gets hurt. We have the trauma part of the emergency room, etc. But in just repeating that, even with Jaiell repeating it, even with Erik talking about it, it's a memory that you have. And look at where you are, E. What I heard from you put on a protective spirit more than the spirit of just simply lashing out at that person. And I think that's where Tally was going. You've been through this before. Yes. You understand where that is. Do you mind unpacking that? Like it's what actually happened with you?
My dad, T. Marshall, was exactly who people thought he was. When I say he was a love, I could not have grown up in a better place to be accepted.
Come on.
I was traumatized when I understood what he had to go through in the organization.
Oh, man.
And so as I watched him being mistreated by leaders in the organization, my assessment of who God was altered.
Yeah.
Because my dad lived a certain way, and therefore I assumed they lived a certain way. And I actually watched people do to him what Jesus would never do in the Bible that I read. So as I look at that, that was so different as I grew up. And then, if we're PKs, we know where all the dirty laundry is. So we know where all the stories are, where all the bodies are buried. And then when we get to meetings, everybody comes out where, hello, Bishop, the brethren, it's whatever. And you're like, you are so...
Hold on, do we have the beat button?
Yeah.
No, but
they had me on another religious network, and they made sure that I understood they didn't have a button. No, the trauma of watching your parents, and I don't know if this is true. I decided I would never want to be a pastor. So when somebody invites me to preach somewhere now, I just crack up. I said, my mom and dad are just have jokes. But the Satan attacks, my belief, he attacks the pastor through the family. Yeah. That's my belief.
Yes.
Where are you the most vulnerable? Somebody coming at your kids. All of you guys are parents. You have the same natural inclination that I have. You come at my kids, my Detroit East Side will come out. Scorched earth. I don't care. That's my family. You have the same thing, but yet you're held to the standard of having to be the man or woman of God.
Right.
I don't really have that.
Hey guys, if you mind if I could ask P, we have our names. P. What made you want to go into the ministry, knowing that you have seen not necessarily the same struggles, you may have seen the same struggles, but what made you want to go into the ministry, and what made Jaiell want to be a pastor?
Beside, of course, the exorbitant paycheck that
you heard me slide it. You heard it.
Listen, I think that it was an act of God. I'm going to tell you the truth. It was an act of God because, like many other pastors' children, I did not want to be a pastor. I grew up wanting to be a veterinarian. I thought that it was going to be easier to work with animals versus working with people. And maybe I haven't really had this conversation, a lot over my lifestyle. So I'm listening to Erik, and I'm like, man, maybe I have some trauma because I'm starting to feel some things as we start to rehearse this. But it was no, it's fine. It's interesting because God had to call me when I was at Oakwood because I was not trying to be a pastor. Even when I got to be that I felt like he called me, I still ran because I didn't want to be held to the standard that if I'm dating a girl, then if we broke up, then now the Lord's name would be tainted because people look at me like I have a higher, because of the calling, then you have higher expectations, and therefore I didn't meet those. And as a result, now see all pastors are this, and God is that, and I ran from that. I didn't like also trying to run into this whole that the pastor has to speak a certain way, has to walk a certain way, and so even to this day, I have a hard time trying to do all the preaching and all the other ways that other pastors do because I just, I just need to be me. And I think.
Let me hear you say God. Let me hear you.
He got it. Tally, he got it. He got it, Tally. He got it. He got it.
Yeah, so I don't know. And of course, I'm glad you guys have Jaiell on because, I'm learning from him, what it's like now to be in now my shadow to a certain degree, as I was raised in my father's shadow. And now to say that he has expectations, and you can listen, you can talk.
I mean, I don't really want to be a pastor because I have my own plans and the skills that I feel like I'm good at. Though I do feel like I get help out in the church in some way, but I don't feel like that's my calling. But it's all up to God. I don't really know what He wants to do.
But Jaiell, do you feel, based on what you've witnessed from your father, your grandfather, that what you've seen has affected how you feel about possibly going into pastoral ministry? Do you look at it as undesirable in some ways because of what you see, or
no? I don't like. I'm not really sure, but I just don't like talking out in public. I like to be in my own little corner and then just roll my name on the credits, so that way I don't have to be involved.
That's how you know you're called, young man. That's how you. Oh man.
Otherwise, no. I didn't really see my dad and what he went through because normally I'd be either hanging out with my friends, with my mom, or sleeping, and so so I didn't really have to see that. But I felt a lot of pressure whenever people talked about like you should know this because you're a pastor's kid, and so it's just like I don't really want, if I have a family, I don't want my family to have to go through that.
Talking about pressure. Go ahead. Sorry, GP. Go ahead.
Ask a question about politics and ministry and how pastoral moves affect the family. Whenever your family had to move or be reassigned, how painful was it? What were some of the emotions that you went through?
I feel like it was really hard. We've only moved once, but I feel like it was really hard because it was everything I knew. And so it was just like, we're going away to a different place, which I know nothing about. We've never been to Virginia before. And it's just like, everything changed. I feel like everything changed when we left from my old place and moved to the new one. And that, it was like scary. It scared me the most to lose all my relationships that I had there. Wow. And I feel like that changed me in certain ways.
Wow.
Can I add this? I think that was probably the most challenging because we were, my ministry has been basically three main places. We started out in DC. Of course, Graham and I were assistant pastors at DuPont. I wasn't married at that time. Married on my way out.
Right.
We went to Baltimore. Was there in Baltimore for 13 years. So that's where we grew as a family. Jaiell and my daughter Azriel were born there. We stayed at VJA for years, and then watching them transition from Baltimore to Virginia was the hardest thing because in my day, my parents were moving, every 4 or 5 years.
Right.
And so it was just like, okay, well, I don't remember going through a lot of changes. I just remember we had friends here at this church. Now we're going to have some new friends here at this church. Now we'll get some new friends at this next church, and we just keep it rolling, but for them, it was like, it was tough. That transition was tough, watching them have to navigate developing new friends And watching, even with my wife, watching that whole dynamic of, you know, people don't know you. Yeah. And you walk into a situation, and sometimes I get all the attention because I'm the new pastor walking in. And so sometimes people try to please you because you're the leader. But then after that, they don't care anything about, you know, the wife, some people. And then the kids, they're not really sensitive to what they're going through. And then the children, when they're dealing with other children, it was just, I will tell you, it was just a hard kind of watching that. And we've had, as a family, we've had to really sit down and talk it out as to the transition and what that has done, because, you know, it was a major transition. They weren't used to moving around. Praise the Lord, thanks to Allegheny East Conference and the Lord blessing our ministry, we could stay at places. But yeah, it was tough.
Wow. And especially those old, right, Jaiell? I mean,
them old people.
Those.
Well, now, Eric, when you know, your dad not only moved around pastoral assignments, he often accompanied Elder Cleveland in evangelistic meetings, and that was back in the day when you could move to a neighborhood, and if you were a Black person, you could really run into some problems. What was it like for you?
We moved every 18. We moved every 18 months. I have no childhood friends.
Wow!
Really?
It wasn't until we got to Detroit. It wasn't until we got to Detroit. I was already a teenager where we stayed put, but by then he was a mature pastor. He had a tiny bit of respect, but we moved every 18 months. So my sister and I don't have childhood friends. Now,
Eric, I have friends that I've known for 65 years.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. It starts in my teenage years. So what happens is, here's the plus of that. We have the ability to make friends and connect very easily.
Okay.
But it's a survival mechanism because we have no childhood friends. And at the whim of the conference leaders, here you went. So my view of conference leaders is that you can do whatever to my daddy and it's going to hurt all of us. And I have trauma stories. So I'm telling you, I have real trauma stories. You can tell whoever to go wherever, and you have that power. Now, I'm a mid-level executive in oil and gas industry right now. I will tell you that we treat people better than the organizations that you guys work in. There are some laws. There's some labor laws. I've been in HR and development for 40 years. There are some labor laws that the organization decimates, and it's actually against the law. And there's no squealing. So if you grow up in that, and I was always in corporate America, if you grow up and you kind of watch that, and then you look at the church, your view of the church is, how do these people do more Jesus-like things than these people who are up telling me how I got to act all day? I'll give you this one, then I'll get off of it. We had a minister come in, fire and brimstone, love him. And he was preaching about the internet. And I don't know,
was it Tally or?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Go ahead. I just don't want to call any names. Tally. Go ahead.
He could have done it. We've been laughing, and we wouldn't have known he was breaking the law. We don't know that. But
true. Go ahead. Go ahead.
In the sermon, he was saying, I wouldn't hire anybody. If I looked on their Facebook page and I saw they were doing this, they certainly wouldn't get hired with me. He was an authority, a person of authority. And the lady running the board in the back is also a director of HR. And afterwards, she said, that's against the law. I said, yeah, but he's Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic. He's not labor law and humanity. So in my world, I honestly, past the trauma, I had to go find God myself.
Yeah.
Outside of the organization. And God is not a Seventh-day Adventist. I preached that one day and I watched people have hernias, Yeah. I watched the insides just churn and blow up. But my God, he's not in Seventh-day Adventist. There are going to be so many people that
he's
never
Episcopalian. Everybody knows that.
You say what?
He's Episcopalian.
Eric, I tend to keep things and P knows this about me, I kind of keep things light when I'm most uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's uncomfortable hearing what you're saying because of how true it is for some people and how not true it is for others.
Yes.
And then and because I'm looking at a far different from the time that I've known Eric. I just started to we started to become close after I got on your network, which I think is amazing. I think we'll talk about that a little bit, but I think what I have learned in coming into, and I came in 2001. When I came into the work, it was, you're not coming to DC. You're not coming to New Jersey. You're coming to AEC. We're coming to where we tell you to go.
Absolutely.
I could remember, and by the way, I'm blessed. I have not moved since 2001. I'm blessed.
Wow.
Matter of fact, I don't think I can count anyone across the board that has not moved. The Lord has blessed me that in 23 years of ministry, I had not had to move my house, nor my children. And I grew, and I had protective people around my children, namely my wife. So, but the uncomfortable part of it, and I really meant that could be something totally different altogether. But and I see Privette laughing, but you know how that is. But the one thing that gets to me is that I remember them saying, "We are like the army. You don't tell us what's going to happen. We tell you where you're going." And I think that mentality have brought on a lot of resentment towards the ministry. And I'm going to say towards the ministry at large. So it kind of bothers me a little bit why I try to stay light, because sometimes I don't feel that some of my peers were treated well. And how do we ever allow our children to come back to the church when they're going through that? Sister producer, that's why I wanted to make this transition to learning more about it when I spoke on your network with close to 300 people. This is ridiculous. They have matter of fact, you talk about it. I'm sorry. You tell us about it.
During the pandemic, just for the pandemic, Jerry Warren, another PK, and Pops Kelly said, "How do we stay connected?" And so we just started, and we actually started at my sister's house. Her husband is a PK. It's a bunch of PKs, and we call him the tent master because he used to be the tent master for Dane Timpson was the tent master for all the. He said he didn't have a gun, he didn't have a knife, and he had to sleep in a tent in the hood while y'all was preaching. Anyway,
Bible. They gave you a Bible. I remember that. They gave you a Bible.
Yes. So we started this worship service where, of course, we have fun on the front end. We make fun of tradition, never anything salvific. And you guys have come on and spoken, and every week God shows up through a bunch of PKs who felt disaffected. Now that we're adults and we found out who God was on a personal level.
Amen.
And that's the connection. So the challenge I'm saying to you guys that are ministers is that you're as protective as you are. Know that Satan is coming harder at your house.
Yeah.
It's like Edson Joseph. How can, Sister White was going to make such an impact on the whole denomination. Satan had to go at her with the Marines. And how? Through her son, to the point she felt almost like, I'm not even qualified to do this. No, you were called. You're Marines. Satan is coming at you hard as possible. So, the ability to now minister doesn't come from being a Seventh-day Adventist. And if that's blasphemous, I'm okay with that. It comes from my personal relationship. By the way, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I'm at church every week. I return my tithe. I love my brothers and sisters as a fellowship. But I'm not terribly wiped out about what goes on at conference offices and in the general conference. I kind of don't care, because my relationship is I better get up and get connected early with the man. God, keep me from being stupid, killing people at work. Just keep me here. And that takes all the energy I got. I can't fix, I can't fix the rest of that.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about those that transition piece, because I saw in several cases how it impacts the family. So what is the happy medium? Because from the ministry side, I hear that after a certain time, some pastors, I don't know to say they outgrow the church, but it may not be a good fit and they need to move somewhere else, and there may be a better fit in another state. How do we reconcile considering the family in the transition and also considering the pastor's skill set and gifts that may fit a church that's totally in a different area? What is a better balance there if we could present the ideal? I'm just wondering from a family perspective, how do you guys feel?
I mean, I won't answer for these gentlemen who have been children, but to a large degree, that's bovine poopy. I mean, because the idea that your skills are needed somewhere else. One of the problems in our denomination is that guys don't stay in a place and women don't stay in a place long enough to develop, and the church doesn't develop, and it gets frozen in a state of atrophy because you're continually moving people around. We're changing that now because, I mean, like Privette, how long have you been in your church right now?
I don't even want to say, man.
Don't say it out loud; they might move you.
But listen, yeah, and that's the point. But at the same time, I've been at this church at Calvary for 8 years.
Yep.
Right.
I will say that Allegheny East allowed me to stay at my first church in Baltimore for 10 years.
Yep.
Right.
So in my ministry, outside of the assistant pastor role, I've been at 2 churches now for 18 years, 1 church for 2.5 years. And so that's where the stability was with my family, and the instability came in the transition.
Sure.
I mean, in my look, I've pastored for 40 years, give or take a few. I mean, first church 2 years, second church 4 years, next church 4 years, church after that 4 years. I mean, I understood why they called it the Advent movement. But Jaiell, I mean, now I know that Erik considers, if I said where's home, you would say Detroit. Am I correct, Erik?
Correct.
And Privette and Jaiell, if I ask you where is home, because emotionally every human being needs a sense of home. Where would you say, Jaiell? Where would you say home was?
I would say home is Maryland, because that's where I grew up, and that's where I had the most connections.
Okay. Jaiell said you can move me to Virginia if you wants to.
Maryland is home.
Yeah, and Tally, it's interesting because in my experience, I have to think about that because
exactly, yeah.
pastors' kids, I don't have a place. I tell the people are like, well, where are you from? I said I was born in California, but I lived there for get out of the hospital, get my mother well, and my parents traveled back to Andrews University. And then from there, I just lived on the East Coast. The longest place I lived was in Baltimore when I finally got settled in and at my first church. So that was 13 years we lived there. And that's what I would claim to some degree as my home place. But I don't have, and so it's
Germantown and Philly wouldn't be home to you?
No.
I actually thought you was a Jersey guy.
Friends there, but we didn't stay there. We didn't stay there long enough.
P, I thought you guys were Jersey guys. Anytime I thought about the Privettes, I thought Jersey. Why? Why did I think that?
Because my dad pastored at Camden, also pastored at Bethel.
In Jersey City?
In Jersey City, yep.
Yeah.
That's what I thought of it.
So, but that is interesting listening to Jai, because I didn't have that experience.
Now, Erik said he never stayed anywhere long enough, and then finally he lands in Detroit. I was going to say, of all the places,
right? He lands in Detroit. I want to ask Erik this question because we hear the Cleveland stories, the Brooks stories. Of course, we hear the Kelly stories. Mm-hmm. Is it true that he left pastoral ministry to save his family?
I think it was a total, complete reset for him. Dad and Calvin Rock were tight.
Okay.
So he did pick up the phone one day and said, dude, I'm out. And Rock said, we got something for you at Oakwood. And that's kind of where that was the thing. He and I lost connection. In fact, the story, he's told it on all the networks. He's apologized to his children on 3ABN, every place he goes. My sister said, if you apologize one more time, we're going to have a word. But he had a strong regret. So when he and I got close again, it was the most delicious thing for him to see me and Jesus tight.
Yeah.
His kids, grandkids,
wow,
great grandkids, all in church. That was the gift. Before he passed and closed his eyes, all of us sitting in his house going like, Dad, you and Mom did great with that. But we had to come to Jesus talk because he was very well known. People would come up and say, do you sing like your daddy? No, I sing under my arms. That's a dumb thing to ask somebody. Anyway, you see the Spirit still working on me. Anyway.
Keep working.
Yeah, he's still working. One day I was sitting home listening to a song, The Cat's in the Cradle. And it was a song about a guy missing his dad.
Yes.
Who was never there. He was in Australia when I was asked to leave several of the other academies that were a tad less melanated than Pine Forge, which is probably where I should have ended up. But I visited a few, but he was always out of town with Elder Cleveland, Brooks, Africa, Australia. He was always gone. So he was never raised his voice, cursed, ever. I never saw him other than just like you guys see him, just straight mellow. But one day I was listening to that song. He comes in and he sat down and he said, what are you listening to? And I looked at him in his eyes, and I was grown by then, black belt in karate, so I'm like, what? But we were always that kind of,
Detroit.
He was unapproachable, but he was always busy. Yeah. So he came and asked me, what's up? And I told him, I said, I'm listening to the song because this is how it felt being your son. I wish my dad had just been a factory worker. I'm in Detroit. At least I'd have had you on weekends and nights. We could have done this, done that. And he was out doing the work. And I think at that point, and he actually apologized. He sat down, and by then we're both big and we're both crying. And he apologized for now. I tell somebody that. I said, as a minister, no, your family's going through something you are not going through. And you get a chance to go away and preach and get the accolades. Oh, that was a great sermon when we're at home. So he apologized. And we were both crying, and we didn't connect immediately, but that was the beginning of our healing. Later on, that was my boy. That's my dude. So, God brought us back. We were each other's biggest fans. But he had a point where he was completely humble with me as his son and apologized for what. Same thing from my mom. My mom was traumatized. So yeah. His ability to be humble brought us back together.
Pastor Kelly, this brings up a point that I want to ask you and Jaiell.
Pastor Kelly, huh?
Yeah, Pastor Kelly. Go ahead.
We got to pray for a couple of your
She did say Pastor Kelly.
You're preaching this morning. I mean, this evening. If I want to ask, as because of being PKs and you're raised in a Christian environment, but you get tempted just like everybody else. This is to you too, Jaiell. You get tempted just like everybody else to do whatever other young people are doing, whatever you get into when you become of a certain age. What is your expectation of your parents at that time? When you want to do whatever you want to do, like, how do you perceive us? Because we're thinking we've got to correct our children, right? We got to get you guys straight, right? And then there's friction between us. So what do you guys want from us? Like, how do you perceive your parents during that time?
And can I add on to her question?
No.
Okay.
Not yet.
What if it's too late? I mean, is it too late?
No, I don't feel like it's too late. But sometimes I feel like you should just let me fall on my face and then get up and correct my mistake if I can. But it's just like, yeah.
What if falling on your face you end up in prison? Would you have wished that we said something? So or is that just let you, because I did, one of my sons just say, Mom, let me make my own mistakes. And so that's why I just
You're
wanted
asking what would happen if Jaiell went to Jaiell?
You know, Tally.
Well, I tell you, sometimes you can't name people right.
Is it too late, Erik, or Privette? You know, my children are grown. I mean, I think that's where we're going, Marlena. You know, we look at them and we look back. And I did do the apology thing, by the way, and it was the hardest thing to do. It's sobering and humbling to have to sit with your kids and tell them I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'll throw out what Christ would do. And because my dad was like that, I call my dad from drug rehab. Now I was grown because only so much I did in the house, and he was big. It's like I ain't messing with Tally face to face. That's not happening. We talk a lot of foolishness through the screen, but yeah. Pops Kelly, you know, So there were some things at home I didn't do, but I'm an adult. I'm out. I'm living my life, and I left. I said I'm gonna go out here and do what I can do. I strongly believe in the prayers of fathers and mothers.
Oh yeah, great.
And I believe the Holy Spirit is contending with your kids. You cannot see it. It's not for your satisfaction.
Wow.
He wants to save us more than you want to see us saved. So that prayer. So I called Pops from, and I had kids by that time. I called Pops from rehab. So I got to tell T. Marshall Kelly singing "It Takes Everything to Serve the Lord" that his son is in a rehab facility for drugs. 3 things he said. Phenomenal. It's the reason I'm sitting here today. First thing he told me was, I love you. The second thing he said was, God loves you. Now, the third thing I didn't get until I got older, and you are no worse than anybody else.
Come on.
Amen. Very good point.
Then that was it. Now, Mom said he got off the phone, stayed on his knees for 4 hours.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of me coming. Once I got out, I also had Eleanor Wright for a week coaching me. So I had those two, never went back, never used again, never, it was the Holy Spirit, but the acceptance and not the condemnation. And we as PKs have the opportunity to embarrass you. So if you are functioning out of embarrassment that you want me to act a certain way, that's not 100% Jesus Christ.
Right. Now, Erik, did you do any of that while you lived with your dad, your parents?
Except for the firearms, no.
Okay. So if you lived with your dad, if you lived with your parents and you were doing drugs.
No, that was not going to happen in that house. No.
Okay. All right.
No, angels would have come and taken the drugs. That was Kelly's house. Just the spirit would have come and just all the drugs just disappeared. No, that brother prayed for real. No, that's not going to happen.
Gotcha.
Wow. This is some.
You saying this song
is that despite the struggles and the storm and the drying of being a pastor, that all three of you admired and respected your fathers.
Yeah.
Why don't you ask Jaiell while he's here?
So what time is it? The greatest respect that I saw was when Jaiell was able to answer a question honestly about what he would expect and need from his father, with his father sitting right next to him. That showed extraordinary respect, love, and
of course.
And let me tell you, Privette, that is just, all of us as parents long for that. But I mean, to hear Erik, I mean, look, I've always respected your dad. I almost revered your dad, Erik. But I mean, I remember the first time hearing you talk about your father, and with him right there, man, it brought tears to my eyes. And so
I didn't think he could sin. That's how I knew him. I just didn't think he could sin.
He didn't do much. His biggest sin was the amount of pigment tended to affect his watch. Yeah, he was late to everything.
Really?
Pops, we'd be like, Dad, get ready. My mother's the reason why Dad was on time.
Wow.
That was
That's a fun fact because I would never.
Yeah, that's no.
Wow.
But never cursed. I knew he didn't steal money because we were poor. Mama was never mad at him for no other women. I lived in the house. I'm telling you, that's exactly who he was. So he's a person of God. To your point, I got to say this, Tally, you hit it. And Jaiell, tell me, we love our dads.
Yeah.
We love our moms. We love our parents. We love them. I was talking to one of my sisters. I'll bring up Terry Barron, and she actually started a PK club. It was not just for FBAs outside of this. And we both commiserated and said, we just wished the system had treated them in a way where they could have been more present for us.
Yeah.
I used to sing in a glee. I used to sing in a glee club, public school in Brooklyn. Yeah. And one of the songs that was sung was Cats in the Cradle. And I knew every word of it. And until you just said it, I remember Cats in the Cradles and the Silver Spoon. Yep. Little boy blue and the man in the moon. When you coming home, son or dad, I don't know when, but we'll get together, Dad. I'm sure we'll have a good time then. And it just exploded. I mean, I sang this song at 8 and 9 years old. And it took this long to recognize what that song really meant.
Yep, I didn't know until he said it. That made me think about that. But quick question to all three of you guys, because my son is able to enjoy the benefits of being a pastor. So I wanted to know, are there any perks that you've received and enjoyed by being PK?
Jaiell,
I was thinking, because Jaiell is trying to get his words together.
He's like, no, and no.
Yeah, no. As I recall, I don't think that our family was as prosperous as my family is now. So the benefits that we had were people were always looking out for us. When it was time to go over, we always had some place to go over to eat. At the same time, when it comes down to birthdays, when it comes down to sometimes anniversaries, graduations, whatever, you do have quite a few people that are looking and wanting to support you. So some people are sitting there, they're like, pastor's kids are bad. And they look at pastor's kids with a microscope and try to point out all the flaws. But then you do have others that just really are looking out, that God sends around the pastor's family, that look out and help you where your family is not able to either afford certain things. And I'm gonna tell you this, and then I'm gonna turn it to my son because he probably has his words. But we went to when my first year at Pine Forge, little kid, moving from 8th grade to 9th grade, can't really dress, all that extra stuff. It was interesting and fascinating that my first 2 brand new pair of sneakers, not that I didn't get brand new pair of sneakers, but I ended up coming to Pine Forge, wanted to have some sneakers. And I believe some church members actually purchased us some sneakers, purchased me 2 pair of sneakers, some high tops, and then some regular sneakers. And that comes out of, a group relationship between my dad and the church that people want to care, to try to do something. And then you're almost ready. And then now that I have a daughter, when she came to Pine Forge, we had, one of the church members actually was like, Pastor, how much you need to get your child in?
Amen.
It's just like, okay, well, they kicked out, they get, what is it, a band? How much is a band? A band is like $1,000 or so. Yeah. But they helped out.
I thought that was a stack.
Yeah. Oh, that's a stat.
That's in the 70s.
So yeah. So of course, you ready?
Yeah. So I feel like some perks were like people knew who I was, but they wanted to know me more than a PK. Like they wanted to know who I really was and not in the shadow of my father. And then family dinners. You always get taken care of. You get to try new foods. And then
pork chops is good, right?
Huh?
Pork chops is good.
I'm a vegetarian, so I don't really know. You're just like, they let you have some, like, when they really know who you are, they let you be carefree and like be able to enjoy your life while you're still a kid, instead of pressuring you with like, oh, you're a pastor's kid, like you need to do this, this, and this, and you need to they let me still be a regular kid even though I was a kid. So yeah, that's what I appreciated also.
Yeah. I think the gift, there were people that my dad loved on that genuinely loved me and my sister. And there were 3 ladies that I was going out in the street and they checked on me. They would always, you doing okay? You need anything? Yada, yada. No, ma'am, we're good. But there are people that love on you. It's not all, oh, we hate the PKs. There are some people that God sends to your kids to be a light and to water on them. So yeah, there's some love in the church for that. I definitely got to give that credit.
Hey, say Latasha, can I say this? I just preached a sermon dealing with the woman, the Shunammite woman. And I told my church, and I wasn't trying to put me out there, but I was just letting them know, based upon the scripture, I think that there's some benefits that people miss, because when the pastor comes to their church, either they look at the pastor as and his family as just regular people in the Adventist church. To some degree, there's some that don't feel like they need to be respected, and then we're looking, ogling other non-Adventist churches, like how they give deference and respect to their pastors and their families versus the Adventist church. The Shunammite woman ends up talking to her husband, builds a space for Elisha the prophet. As a result, God looks back with favor upon her and her family. What was she lacking? She was lacking the pitter patter of a baby running around in the house. God, this point that God looked out for her, and as a result, gave her what she perhaps desired, and therefore, even when it seemed like her son died later on in the story, God still came back and said, "I gave you this gift. Perhaps something happened." The prophet comes back, blesses her. God answers that, resurrects that son. And I think that there are people that miss out on the blessings because they're so busy trying to either be a juggernaut or I can't get with this pastor or whatever the case may be. And they're really blessings that God will remember you in your time of need when you look out for his servants and his children.
Absolutely.
I think that people really need to know that.
Absolutely. I got to sign on to that. Having been a PK, I've had pastors I did not philosophically align with. I will never be a thorn in a pastor's side. Ever, ever, ever. Because that job, whether I agree with your perspective or not, one pastor, we were chatting and I said, my view of the role is his perspective is, well, I'm the pastor. Well, until you pay me some money, your title don't mean nothing. And that threw him a little bit because I don't think anybody, I said, but as a servant leader, as Jesus Christ was. And so we had some discussion about position power versus referent power.
Wow.
I will never do anything or say anything to any of my pastors. First of all, I'm never going to disrespect them. I'm never in public going to ever. And we don't have to. We can still play golf. We can still talk. We can still be close. But I'm not going to be the member in the church that you tell your kids about later on. That will never be me, ever.
That is amazing. that you both said that, because I think then this is where we learn the sensitivity, I think, side of it that we don't really think about. What would you tell someone that, what would you tell the average member if you had the chance? And I'm talking to all three of you, and either one, what would you tell the average member as far as, how to treat the pastoral family?
Buy them sneakers.
I think that'll work. And give them stacks and bands.
They don't want the Walmart sneakers. You got to buy the good sneakers.
Jordan.
It would be nice. It would be nice. I think that when you're talking, I think that people just need, if people follow the principles of Jesus Christ, I think that'll be fine. If we just treated people as you want others to treat you.
Right.
If you talk about other people's children as you want people to talk about your children, I think that you'll be good. I don't find Adventist pastors in general to be, those types that's always trying to money grab and trying to power grab all the time. And so we are normal people serving our position that God has called us to. We have our families. And I think if people would just say, and listen, I don't want people talking about me like that. So let me not say this, because like we said earlier, my son was running around with other kids, and this happens in other churches. How come you think that pastors' kids are bad? Who they bad with?
Our baby kids.
And so therefore. Yeah, let me hold on. I feel something coming up.
This is a safe space where you can release.
No, it's not safe. This is a trauma response. Trauma response.
Privette is he's mining some of his trauma. He didn't know it was there.
And that's real. And that's real because I think that people talk about pastors' kids and sometimes in a negative light. And you best believe if you're going to sit out there and talk, you better have your kids right. Because don't sit up there.
He shook his head like Teresa. Y'all don't know Teresa. Teresa. Well.
I know Teresa.
Yeah, okay.
Privette, most of the time, their children are worse.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So they feel better when they talk about your child because they're the worst. But as long as they have something to speak on, they feel better.
Yeah, I get it.
At Camp Danny Davis, ACT team, I had a lot of pastors, PKs on my ACT team.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun.
Are you going to finish that thought?
No, not while you here.
This is a safe space.
That's right.
One of them was my son, but I know
that's
him.
Right. No, and I think that they become born leaders, but they want to live their own lives. And I think that giving them that, and I'm going to call that the safe space in that surrounding belong to them. They don't want to be the first person in line at camp meeting, to get something to eat. They don't even want the privileges. They just want to be themselves. That's what I saw within those that I had, with me. Including my own kids. Lord, have mercy. So, I think that's awesome, P. I do think it's awesome that if we could just treat people the way Jesus, that's what I heard from you. The way Jesus would treat somebody, you ought to be able to treat others the same way.
And if I might say, to all
Ask
of our...
Pastor Kelly. Marlena,
that's right.
Pastor
I'm sorry.
Kelly.
That's right, Pastor Kelly. If I might say this to all of us who are online, it takes a lot for pastors and their families, and you are going to places where most of the time you have no family, no friends, and if we could just be kind and loving to the whole family, what if that would change that family to make them feel loved and embraced, And I think we should be very mindful of that. Most of the time our minds are on all kinds of other things, what the pastor is doing and their decisions and blah blah blah, whether it's good or bad, whether we agree or disagree. And then we are harder on the wife. We expect the wife to do all these things at church, and then we alienate them. I mean, it's horrific. So if this program would help people to see, let's love our first families. Let's love them, even if we disagree. We're different people. We don't have to always agree, but let's love those family and love those children and be with them and support them. Then maybe our experience together will be a wonderful experience that when they leave, we can say, man, we had a wonderful time here together.
Jaiell, your dad said that when he went to Oakwood, the calling of ministry came upon him there. Are you planning to go to Oakwood at all?
Yes, I am.
Tally, ask him to say God.
Yeah. Lean your head to the side and say God.
No, I really want him to say it, Jaiell. This is coming from your godfather. Say God. I want to hear it. Come on, Jay.
There's the pressure we talked about.
Yeah, they go to pressure. You're right. My fault. Yeah. I'm sorry. Hey.
No, Erik, you have kids. I mean,
my son's an elder in the church. My dad was an elder.
Okay,
he's the elder. My son's an elder. I'm not an elder.
Did your son ever contemplate ministry or?
I think we looked at being as highly educated as you all are and the financial remuneration for that. And we decided to take a more blessed mercenary perspective on employment. He can preach though. If you pull up our website, the boy can go. He's a throwback to his grandpa.
Wow.
Yeah. But yeah. So yeah, all my kids in church, grandkids, God's good.
Amen.
Now, I know we have to wrap up soon, but I wanted to ask from you all's perspective. So, say we have GP here. He's father of 3. She's 3 now. Is she 3?
We say 3 kids. 3 kids.
3-year-old. Sorry, 3-year-old.
Man, that's been a busy week since.
But no. What, we talked about what we could say, what we could do to help church members. What can we say to pastors who are right now raising their children? What can we say to them to help the experience be a little bit more healthy for their children and make sure that their experience as a pastor's kid, keeps them level-headed through that process? Is there any advice you would give to a pastor raising children right now?
I'm gonna jump in and say time. I know you're busy. I know you're ministering to others, but taking the time, quality time, look your kid in the eye, the touch, the holding. I'm here for you. You guys are incredibly pressed, but yeah. Time.
And I would like to say, and this is being transparent, Marlena. And excuse me if I get a little emotional.
It's okay.
What do we say? Breathe. Okay. So when I was a young pastor in Baltimore, Jaiell was with me, Azriel was with me. I tried to spend that time. I got to the point where I felt as though it was messing me up.
Mm-hmm.
I had to take, and especially with my son, I had to take him to various meetings. Everybody else is, networking, doing their thing, and then I have a baby. It was Pastor Melvin Hayden, the second, that came to me and encouraged me. It's like, man, here you have your son. That is so good that you guys, that you're taking time out. And he just encouraged me. And I felt as though I can't be a real pastor because I'm having to take care of my son. And that sounds crazy. That sounds crazy. But it was that encouragement that helped me after it settled in my spirit. It was just like, okay, what is the real priority here? What kind of pastor do I want to be? And then I heard other pastors that are, like Erik's father and others who are traveling all the time, and you hear how they lacked that connection with their fathers. I was like, I'm not preaching everywhere. I don't get called out. I'm not a director. I'm not a president. I'm not anything else but a regular pastor. And why am I sensing that I need to be that much away from my family? Because I saw other people and they were successful and it seemed like that was okay. And then you start listening to, some pastors apologizing because they weren't there. I look at my father's experience and he was there, and that's what I look back at. He was taking us back and forth to school. He was there. Even now to this day, he'll still call me, and I feel somewhat bad because sometimes I'm busy because I got a number of different things going on, but he tries to call me every week. DuWayne, how you doing? What's going on? And so I would just say, listen, success is going to be out there for you to chase after. But your success, number one, and your number one priority is your family. Listening to my son, being able to articulate his feelings, we give him that opportunity. My daughter is doing the same. We tried to be there, and it's nice to see them growing in their own relationship. And I want to see my family saved. If things never transition for me, I don't chase after it, but anything higher. As long as my family is good, my wife and I are right and tight, we have a good rapport with everybody, I'm fine.
Man, I just in closing, man, when you said, Privette, I might get a little bit emotional, your son immediately turned to you with the most protective gaze. And you could tell that whatever it was that was bothering you, he was going to be there for you as much as he could. And man, that touched my heart. Look, Jaiell, if they ever don't give you the chocolate you want, I will adopt you, man, and come live at my house, man, because you're the kind of son that every man wants to see his daughter bring home.
No.
Well, how about that?
I love that. Wow, this is great. I thank you guys so much for sharing and being vulnerable. I think this will be helpful to so many people and understanding your perspectives and even helping some people make some adjustments in their priorities, which we hope. And I know I did want to go back to the group before we close that we mentioned earlier that's designed for PKs. Is that my understanding? There's a group
the group that we're on, even though PK started, it's open to absolutely everybody.
It is amazing.
It's open to everyone.
Yeah,
okay.
It's absolutely. If you want to get on the mailing list, we'll send it to you. Just send it to gotentmaster.com. We'll get you a weekly invite. We've got so many different speakers, and God has brought, you gentlemen on to bless us. But Donna Willis from France or Gail Masando from South Africa, a very diverse speakers list. Gina Spivey Brown. If I start naming the list, I can't go on. Jesse Wilson came on for a minute, but we tried to block him because you got mental health behind you. I'm on it. But absolutely, God has blessed it and allow us to be spiritual without worrying about whether we were breaking any organizational norms. We could actually kind of get real, and God has blessed it. So yes.
Wow.
Is it a live recording?
It is every Sabbath at 3 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. East Coast, and usually you guys East Coast people are finished with dinner. And it was in the hundreds, and we thought maybe after the pandemic it would go away, and we're still close to 200.
Yeah,
every Sabbath. People go to church and come back.
Yeah, I steal sermons off of that, but
GoTentMaster.com and you can get your invite to join. Okay, thank you.
I stole a tally sermon off of that. I got word for word, except I don't know what some of those words he said mean.
Right. You got a thesaurus. You got a
Neither
thesaurus
do
there.
I. Neither do I.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
Once again, thank you to our guests. We thank you so much, Erik Kelly, for joining us. We thank Privette duo for being here. Thank you so much, Jaiell.
Great, man. Oh, incidentally, I just looked out of GP's window. His daughter just took the keys and is racing off with his car now. These PKs, man, they are just.
Yeah,
Better
they
go get
start.
it, GP.
But no. Thank you so much for being part of this dialogue. As always, we hope that it's helpful to someone. We look forward to reading your comments and reflections in the chat. But until next week, we'll see you same time, same place. All right, everybody.
Happy Sunday.
Go ahead, Tyler. We were waiting on it, right? We're waiting.
If it's Sunday, somewhere there's a pastor's kid out there.
Waiting for Monday.
Take care, everybody. Good seeing you, Erik. Good seeing you, Privette.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great one. Bye-bye.